Now we have another citizen story from Stephanie Evans. Miss Evans is a counselor for County Corp, but she's here to explain what she sees in her neighborhood.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Evans, and I won my home through the City of Dayton's Urban Homestead Program in 1987. As a single mother of 6 and just getting off on my feet after being on welfare for 14 years, this was like a dream come true for me. Over the years, I watched my property values slowly increase, and I began to feel as though I was building a foundation for my family. But now I'm beginning to wonder what's going to happen next. Our property values are upside down, and with each new empty house in our neighborhood and the new bargain sales that the banks have going from the foreclosures, I lose value in my property with each one. I really need to paint the exterior of my home right now, but with the way the economy is, I have no equity available to finance materials, let alone finance the labor. I would really like to see things change. I live in the Dayton View historic neighborhood, and Governor Cox used to live there as a child. And Dayton is filled with many homes that are 100 years old or more, beautiful homes that have been there and sustained families for years. But this issue is more than about our history. This is about the spirit of people like Governor Cox, people who wanted to see our area grow and prosper. So what I'd like to also see is that we have ways for people in our neighborhoods to be able to do the maintenance. I need to do this maintenance to help maintain my home as new families move in and our property values start to increase again. But we have no means of doing that. There are certain guidelines and regulations that a historic neighborhood is required to adhere to, yet they have nothing available for us to help do that. People may remember in the past of hearing how neighbors have helped each other by doing paint parties and rent parties and even barn raisings. There's always been a neighbor-to-neighbor value here in Ohio and across the country as we settled everything. And I would like to see those things happen again. We're not looking for a handout, we're looking for a hand up.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. And our next question comes from Ken McCall of the Dayton Daily News.
My question is Commissioner Foley. There's no doubt, as Ms. Evans' story illustrates, that vacant and foreclosed properties are causing are dragging down values in neighborhoods across the region. As I'm sure you know, a recent study found that an estimated 36,000 housing units are currently vacant in Montgomery County alone, and that could go up to 48,000 by 2013. Now, the county and some other governments have gotten some money. I think it's $14 million so far in neighborhood stabilization program funds, federal stimulus money or related to it, that will help go to address vacant and foreclosed properties that are hurting these neighborhoods. And you've applied for another $60 million more. So the question is, will that be enough to stem this tide of vacancies and foreclosures? And what can the county and the region do if you don't get the additional funds?
Yeah, I think the answer is I don't think it's going to be enough. I mean, I think this is a slog that we are going to have to work through for many years to really turn these neighborhoods around. I can tell you with the neighborhood dollars that come from the federal government, the county is using that money to identify some of those neighborhoods that are kind of on the edge. For example, there's a Fort McKinley neighborhood up in Harrison Township that there's a focus for some of those dollars on, saying, okay, this neighborhood has experienced some foreclosure problems, but we believe that with some infusion of some capital, we can buy some properties and renovate some homes, and we can maybe turn this neighborhood around. We're also using some of that money for our homeless prevention initiative. It's a 10-year campaign to end homelessness in Montgomery County. The city is using a lot of their neighborhood stimulus dollars to tear down properties. There are a lot of properties, in the core urban neighborhoods that are to the point where they're beyond repair, and so that's the city's focus. Do I believe, the question was, do I believe that the money that the city and the county are getting for this initiative is enough to stem the tide? I do not. I think it's going to be helpful. I'm hopeful that it can be, we can look back, and I mean, I'm optimistic we can look back and say that money is going to be well spent and well used, but it's just a piece of the puzzle.
Thank you, Montgomery County Commissioner Dan Foley. I don't know if another member of our panel wants to take a stab at Ken's question.
Well, I mean, the funding that the local folks are trying to put to the best use right now is the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, is what it's called. This is a short-term program, meaning that we've had 2 rounds from the federal government. But as Commissioner Foley points out, this is a long-term issue. Ohio did, unlike California and Nevada and Florida, the foreclosure problem didn't suddenly hit us. We've been experiencing this for many, many years. And the damage that it's done to our communities is vast. Dayton is not alone. Cleveland, believe it or not, has a much worse problem with vacant and abandoned property than you do here in Dayton, if it makes you feel any better. But it's going to take a long-term commitment from the federal government and from the state. The state can help with this issue. In fact, in House Bill 3, one of the other provisions is that if we could get this fee imposed on the servicers to disincentivize them to file a foreclosure, the money generated from that fee could be used to help prevent foreclosures, but also be used to address vacant and abandoned property. And that could generate $30 to $40 million every year. That's just from the state, and that money would come back to the county, and also the state would keep a pot to do some of its own funding for those purposes. So that, I mean, it's not going to be enough to turn it around overnight, but we have to get at it, or the problems will just escalate faster. I mean, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to use some of the funds to demolish properties, because I think we have to look at this issue realistically. Not all of these homes are going to be brought back, but vacant and abandoned property that's left to deteriorate on its own, often bank-owned and neglected by the banks. This property is an eyesore. It drags down neighbors' property values, and I think in some ways, or at least in some cases, the best solution is to demolish it. And we could always use more green space, so I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to create an empty lot.
Thank you. That was Bill Faith, Executive Director of the Coalition on Homelessness and Housing in Ohio.